Now, in an open letter entitled "Before It Is Too Late," first published by an online newspaper, former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo berates Nigeria's President Goodluck Jonathan for his management of Nigeria, challenging the president to tackle a wide range of issues, including corruption and security. We look at the economic issues raised in the former president's letter with Bismarck Ruhani, the CEO of Financial Derivatives. Thank you so much, Bismarck, for joining us. Wow, it's a very interesting read, and we'll leave the politics for the politicians. So let's talk a bit more about the economic implications of some of the points that former President Olusegun Obasanjo has raised in this open letter. And one of the things that stands out clearly is the discussion around the oil sector and corruption there. Of course, there's new allegations around $7 billion, if you like, missing, that should have been transferred to the central bank account, oil exports. And we know that for all of this year, there has been that discussion around oil theft. Your assessment about particularly the oil economy in Nigeria and the urgency that the former president is calling for change.
I think first and foremost, you cannot separate politics from economics. The usual saying is that good politics does not necessarily mean good economics, but good economics would actually end up being good politics in the long run. But to start with, the point that is being made is known already. But what Obasanjo's letter has done is to actually provoke thought and to put it on the table. The reality is that the Nigerian economy is vulnerable. The Nigerian economy is going along, and looking at it just on a day-to-day basis, it will appear that it is sound, solid, and in very good stead. It's growing at 6%, 6.81%.
Some suggest 7% for next year.
And that is higher than the global economy. But compared to its potential, it is still suboptimal. Having said that, the most important point here is that the nefarious activities, right, of the oil bunkerers and the oil bunkering enterprise, which used to constitute only about maybe 4 or 5, maximum 10% of the total oil production of the country, has increased to about 40%. Now, with that kind of situation and the economic base growing, I mean, that is the demographics. You have a growth in population, you have a youth population, you have a median age of about 18, then you cannot afford to allow leakages of up to 40% of the system. Absolutely. That makes the economy extremely vulnerable. So the vulnerability of the oil sector, not only to prices and not only to the OPEC quota, but also to internal un-Nigerian activities, that is theft and all that, makes it extremely vulnerable and worrying. So what does that bring about? That calls to question, what is the leadership doing about arresting these threats to national security? The oil theft problem is a threat to national security and cannot be left to linger.
Right.
Okay.
Now, in your view, we have seen the government do a little bit, but of course, clearly there's quite a lot more that needs to be done to really rein in this theft. But especially for those looking from outside in, your thoughts about how they're seeing Nigeria in 2014. We know that Nigeria is, of course, the top destination for foreign direct investment, but do you think this is likely to change going into next year?
No, I think one of the important things about democratic, plural democracy is that the fact that you can have a debate, and the fact that even within the ruling party there is debate as to how to redefine its objective and its strategy of staying in power. The same thing is happening in South Africa. The ANC is going through that, which is a liberation movement, which is much more towed in line than the PDP, which is a political enterprise. Now, the reality is that questions are being asked, thoughts are being provoked, the debate is on. Now, what are the 3 issues that have to be discussed? 1, leadership; 2, policies; and 3, strength of institutions. Leadership is being questioned as to, at this time of vulnerability, what have you done to rein in, to bring to a complete halt this theft? You can't afford any theft. We can't say, okay, maybe this is the amount of theft, oil theft, that we can allow. You either deal with it or you don't deal with it. Because the enterprise is so large that there must be a lot of fifth columnists and conspirators within the system who are actually enjoying part of this loot.
Right.
Leakages are detrimental and lethal to economic growth. Injections are positive and they create multipliers.
Right.
The leakages are too huge.
Okay, if we even bring this issue of how the government is addressing the oil theft,
yes,
and bring it, juxtapose it against some of the other policies they're trying to push forward, like the removal of subsidies. And remember what happened in 2012 when the government tried to remove the subsidies, and of course there were strikes all over the country. There was a view that until the government can resolve issues like leakage, the type of leakages that we're now seeing, that apparently seems to have even accelerated over the last 2 years, that the changes that we need to really get this oil sector in place, things like the PIB, for instance, may not actually come through. So, given that, your thoughts about the urgency that is needed in terms of addressing these issues? Clearly, the former president thinks it's urgent.
It's urgent, but the point is that you're dealing with the symptoms. These are structural imbalances which have been there for a long time. And out of neglect or connivance, we've allowed this thing get to a point where it is now dangerous.
In fact, some say it's an industry.
Yeah, now it is an enterprise. Now, the reality is that the Nigerian, you see, what we have is that leadership policy, the policies are okay, right? The policies are excellent. Leadership is average, or, historically is average. But the institutions are weak. The security service is an institution. How strong is it? The Central Bank of Nigeria is led properly and dynamically, but how strong is it as an institution? The fiscal authorities and all that, those institutions need to be strengthened all the way. So no matter who the leadership is, no matter what the policies are, those institutions are strong enough to see Nigeria through the rough and tumble. Right. Because we are going to have some very challenging periods in 2014.
Right. If we can even touch one that could be a major challenge, President Obasanjo made a point that the most dangerous ticking bomb is youth unemployment.
Yes.
Particularly in the face of unbridled corruption and obscene, like he put it, rulers' opulence. Now, your thoughts about that as a big challenge for Nigeria going forward? We've seen what has happened in the Middle East and North Africa. Is that a possibility in terms of the unemployment and the fact that we have seen very growth that has not been backed up with jobs in Nigeria? How big a problem could this be further down the line?
No, the way to look at it is that government revenue has increased by 1,000% from 2000 to now, right? Because oil prices went from $10 to over $100 and something, right? Production stayed flat and down, started declining marginally. However, the people's consumption, the national level of consumption, what you forget about growth. Growth is not the issue. What is happening to consumption? Consumption is growing at a rate half as fast as growth and government revenue is growing. As a matter of fact, consumption is growing at about 10% of the rate at which government revenue in dollar terms has grown over the past 10 years, which means that income inequality is actually eating into the ability to consume, because the bulk of the population are at the bottom of the pyramid, and you have to do something about that. So you have to address income inequality, you have to address poverty, and you have to address the strength of the institutions. All of this are going to take time. So it's important, and we are happy that Obasanjo has put it on the table, but we also have to note that these things have been there for